Hey guys, my name is Ryan, and welcome to Overwatch Central. Guess who we're talking about today against MOIRA? In all honesty, I really like how this hero plays, and I love talking about her, and I think she's going to have a huge impact on the game, and I'm hoping that a good amount of you are wanting to learn and play this hero when she comes out into competitive as well. Because of this, I really wanted to highlight the first time that we have seen MOIRA in any form of pro tournament, I suppose, and that tournament came in the form of the Hulktastic Cup this weekend. Now, this tournament was a bit of a show match more than anything. It was for fun, there was no prize pool, and a lot of their pros were obviously streaming their perspectives as we have Custa's gameplay on screen. The tournament was put into place in honour of Internet Hulk, who sadly passed away last week. He was a huge aspect of how the competitive Overwatch community came together and was responsible for the original Envious lineup coming together. They have evolved over time into Envious and then of course into Dallas Fuel, and that simply wouldn't have happened without him. He was one of my favourite players from the early beta days, brought together some interesting compositions and strategies, and he is going to be missed by a large part of the community. But now I really want to sort of focus on what Custa did really well with MOIRA in this gameplay, how he's made her effective, what playstyle he kind of went for, but also the aspects of gameplay that he really struggled with. And I really wanted to highlight some of the problems that MOIRA players are going to have. MOIRA can often feel like a low impact hero, and because of that it can be often very difficult to know when you aren't playing MOIRA as optimally as you should be, but also when you're being detrimental to your team. And a lot of that relies on the healer damage balance that goes on. This is a two-edged sword, it works both ways, but I want to focus on the hunt for damage, I suppose, more than anything first. It can be really common to see a MOIRA with a damage medal, silver, bronze, even gold some of the time as well. And whilst I do understand it's fun to gloat, you may want to hold off before you start shouting at your team saying that you have the gold damage medal, as a very obvious retort to that is, well, it means that you're not healing then if you're top of damage. And whilst this isn't strictly true, they may have a point. If you have gold damage but not gold healing, then you may need to focus on the rest of your team. But I fully understand the hunt for eliminations can be a really big thing. MOIRA has a long-ranged auto lock-on ability that can take down characters fairly quickly. If you see a low Genji or any hero on low health, and you play something like a Winston, those instincts start to kick in and you may want to confirm those kills. But it's not worth the risk if it's at the expense of healing your team. You are a support at the end of the day and you need to make sure that your team stays alive, even if that means that you have to give away one of your damage medals. But as I said, this works both ways, and the other side of this problem can be huge as well. With the gameplay you're seeing on screen, you can see that Custa is healing his team a lot, they're taking a lot of damage, but already on the right hand side of the screen you're starting to see that his weapon charge is running out pretty quickly, and he's not really focused any right click damage to get that charge back up on the enemy. This might be to do with where the enemy are positioned, a lot of barriers in the way, and how much damage he is forced to heal up, but he got starved of healing means that he couldn't put out any form of damage with his orbs, for example, and eventually the team fight goes to the enemy as they just run out of healing. And this is what I mean, striking that balance between getting enough damage out and confirming those kills that you can keep that weapon charge, but also making sure that you support and look after your team as much as possible. With the King's Row stomp that you're seeing in the background earlier, but also going to start seeing again now, you very rarely saw Custa running out of weapon charge, and that's because he strikes that healing damage balance perfectly. Speaking of the healing output of MOIRA is actually insane. In this gameplay, Custa healed 10k healing in a 6-minute round on King's Row attack. As you saw bits and pieces, the fight never really went completely their way. It wasn't a complete stomp, but it really shows how much healing MOIRA can get out. Now I want to break down where that healing came from, and it was predominantly to do with MOIRA's left click over anything like orbs and her ultimate, which we'll go over in a second. Also, let's look at the use of the left click. It's almost like sprinkling a little bit of water, drizzling the team with your urine colored whatever it is, instead of using a lot of it at once. Remember that your primary fire does have a heal over time effect, which is residual, and the more that you heal your team, the more that tends to stack. So you don't need to hold down your left click for a couple of seconds, just spraying it a little bit now and again is good enough to make sure that your team gets some form of healing. And as I said, because of that, you saw that Custa didn't really run out of weapon charge and went through this match pretty much uncontested when it came to that balance. Now let's look at the damage and healing orbs, and predominantly it was damage orbs that we saw coming out of Custa. They were used pretty much on cooldown, very similar to how Reinhardt's may use fire strikes. It's incredibly good at getting ultimate charge and also burning down opponents that a Tracer can then pick off if they're low on health, for example. We only really saw Custa using the healing orbs in critical situations, either to sort of sustain himself if there's nobody nearby that he can right click to death and get some of that self healing for, but also when his team are all very low on health as well, he can throw out the orb and then spray them for a quick bit of burst healing. It's exactly the same with the ultimate as well. It charges super quickly, and more often than not we saw Custa using it very aggressively other than to heal his teammates. Of course, in those situations where his team do need healing, he tends to fire the beam at them, but more often than not he's trying to aim it at the Reinhardt to burn it through his barrier as it goes completely completely through, remember, and it almost provokes responses out of the enemy as well when using this ability, pretty much on cooldown. As soon as he gets it, he uses it almost like he's top decking it, honestly, heart of the card style, but it really shows how effective this ultimate can be. It's not high impact on its own, but it can certainly provoke a response out of the enemy with the amount of damage and healing that it can do. Now let's quickly talk about the versatility of MOIRA. And overall, you'd be pleased to know that she works very well in a lot of situations and in a lot of compositions. She was pretty much played with every healer support in the game. We saw her paired with Ana, Zenyatta, Lucio, and Mercy, and she worked well with pretty much all of them. There weren't any situations where it looked a little bit too difficult to support a team with the synergy that she had going on. Of course, I think she pairs best with Ana, which is good for those Ana players as well, but it's certainly not the worst thing in the world to see a MOIRA paired with a Zen or a Lucio. She also worked well across different maps, most people pegging MOIRA to be really good on those closed off areas. Sanctum Nepal, Control Center Lijiang, King's Row is a good example, just these closed off flat maps where heroes like Reinhardt Zarya can work really well. But also in areas like Dorado and the open areas of the control maps that we saw, MOIRA didn't look completely out of her depth. Because of that, she has a good amount of flexibility that I think a lot of players are going to gravitate towards. But going over the overall verdict, I think she's incredibly strong. She's going to surprise a lot of people as she's incredibly unsuspecting when it comes out to how much healing and damage that she can output. She can be shut down with a good diva if she's eating all of the orbs, but also any form of barriers in there to make sure that, like we saw in that gameplay with Custa, not being able to right click the enemy to regain any weapon charge means that you will starve yourself from any form of healing and you can actually be shut down that way of playing. We saw some very aggressive use out of the orbs, very conservative with the left click, not spraying and praying for too long, but also I would be surprised if this version of MOIRA does go into the game. She is a little bit too strong, and if I was to put any money on anything being nerfed in her kit, it would be how quickly her ultimate does charge, because it does come off cooldown fairly quickly. I think it was less than a minute was the quickest one for Custa, which is huge for a support ultimate. But let me know what you think. Hopefully you found this useful. You can find all of Custa's details in the description below. He's going to be one of the main people to look at for you MOIRA players, so I would recommend watching him. And until next time, take care. We'll see you then.